Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. Why XRP may be one of the only cryptos worth holding to 2030. And it's interesting. So this is a headline coming from the Motley Fool. And they get some things right, they get some things wrong, which is why I want to highlight this. But I think that most mainstream media outlets, and it really, actually, it's probably fair to say most people in crypto, at least outside of our community, don't understand why XRP is long-term viable. And it very clearly is. XRP has been around for over a freaking decade, and it just keeps getting better and better in terms of adoption, utility, and obviously even price, being one of the top performers in the entire crypto asset class yet again here. And so why are some people so clueless? There's also this headline, is XRP a dead coin? Prominent angel investor responds. And some of the points covered in both of these articles are related, so I'm going to tackle them both at the same time. And I'll also wrap up the video by sharing with you some very good reason to be optimistic that markets are going to rebound. And so it's already been fantastic, and I talked about this in my very last video, seeing at least to this point, as of the time I'm recording this, XRP and the crypto market has been showing strength in the face of a global sell-off of stocks and gold and oil plummeting, right? There's all sorts of things that are just tanking. And you saw crypto, including XRP, go up. Now that has never happened before. Not that I'm aware. I can't think of a single instance where you've had a global sell-off and the panic didn't spread to crypto. Like, think about COVID, for example, in March 2020. Remember when XRP dropped to 10 cents? I sure remember that. But not this time. So there's that, but still, this isn't some sort of blow off here. It's not like crypto's ripping to the upside. It's nice to see a little bit of green. But let me give you some reason before we wrap up the video as to why you should be optimistic that, all things considered, we're going to see that final rally to the upside with Bitcoin hitting a new all-time high, XRP destroying Bitcoin's performance, melting faces, finally entering price discovery for the first time in the better part of a decade at this point, and having a proper alt season. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. All right, so into this first piece. XRP worth holding to 2030, huh? You know, it's fascinating to see this because, they don't even talk about the idea of the cyclical nature of crypto and entering a bear market. They're just like, yeah, it might make sense to hold it through 2030 or beyond. Well, if you're a super long-term guy like me, for sure, it's just interesting that they're talking about it in terms that with that specific timeline and not even mentioning that. I think it's worth at least mentioning that. Now, for me, once I started buying in 2017, my attitude was, I understand there's cycles. I'm just going to buy, I'm going to hold, and then if I'm ever enticed to sell, I'll take advantage of that and sell, and if not, maybe I'm wrong and it goes to zero. Like, that was pretty much my attitude, right? But anyway, piece reads as follows. Check this out. It's no secret that cryptocurrencies come and go, often after experiencing 15 minutes of fame that cause many to call for their ongoing dominance as part of a new paradigm of financial technology. But some coins, like XRP, have demonstrated staying power that lasts for years rather than months or weeks. And that means they stand nearly alone as some of the only cryptos worth buying and holding through 2030, and perhaps even beyond that. Okay, now, before I run through the rest of the article, I am absolutely going to circle back to this. I wanted to, since we're talking about that topic, there's this headline. Is XRP a dead coin? Prominent angel investor responds. Prominent angel investor Armando Pantoja recently commented on the popular claim within the crypto community from critics labeling XRP as a dead coin. Yeah, I gotta tell you, it's really cute hearing that at this point. XRP, again, being one of the top performers in the entire crypto asset class, utility increasing, more and more developers building on top of the XRP ledger, more businesses actually using it. Pick a metric. I mean, you can look at the wallet count too. Obviously, this is investors on a global scale saying, yes, we believe XRP makes sense. And this is despite the United States government via the SEC literally trying to destroy it. It was actually attacked, and it still stayed in the top 10 coins by market cap, which is incredible. And I'll just tell you, one of the primary points that Armando made here. It's something that I've talked about a number of times in recent years. It's the fact that XRP has truly showed resiliency, rare resiliency, because there are only 3 coins that have ever been created that have always been in the top 10 coins by market cap their entire lives. And that's Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP. That is it. There are no more. You can go tens of thousands of lines down the row, check out all those coins, and you will find that that is not the case. That is certainly not the case. But if you go back a decade, you could see all sorts of coins that were valued about the same or higher than XRP in terms of market cap, and now they're nobody even remembers what they are. So clearly, it couldn't have been more obvious. How is that not enough? That should be enough. If you're a naysayer about XRP, how about it just sticking around? Shouldn't you at some point be intellectually honest and be like, well, I don't think it makes sense, but the rest of the world does. What am I missing? At what point do you look inward and be like, what do I not get? Because Bitcoiners, you should do that if you're anti-XRP irrationally. It's the same approach that you hope that people who are anti-crypto and anti-Bitcoin would take. Eventually, you'd hope that enough time would pass that these people, and now it's been 16 years Bitcoin has existed, wouldn't you hope eventually they'd open their eyes and be like, okay, this Bitcoin thing, I've been saying no to it for over a decade, yet here it is, it just keeps going up. What am I not getting? At what point do you open your eyes and be like, clearly I'm the problem, I don't get something? When do you do that? And so that's the situation, and I've always said that with XRP. It's just so freaking obvious for anybody who could just remove their damn bias and figure out it's an incredible buying opportunity. I've been preaching this for years. It just makes freaking sense. And so this Motley Fool article, they get some things right and some things wrong. Check out this. They wrote, XRP has a few things going for it that most other cryptocurrencies don't, starting with its rapid speed and low transaction fees. Perhaps the most important factor driving its long-term viability is that by design, it aims to cater to financial institutions rather than investors specifically. Okay. The part they got right, rapid speed, low transaction fees. Everything they said after that in that sentence, well, it's 2 sentences, that was wrong. Think about it. XRP was created specifically as a better version of Bitcoin. So Bitcoin had promise. Clearly it got adopted because those promises and attributes that it had, that's appealing to people. And so obviously it has failed as a peer-to-peer cash system because it's too slow and too expensive. But it turns out that just because it was first and because it does have other desirable attributes, it's decentralized in nature, immutable ledger, all that whole thing, it's sticking around. It has staying power. It just does. Whether you or I like it, doesn't matter. It just does. Now, as far as XRP, though, it has those things, but it also does what Bitcoin was supposed to do in the first place, and it was one of the first coins that could actually do that at scale. That's at the core why XRP stuck around. It was created to be a better version of Bitcoin. So this idea that it's because of financial institutions and ain't catering, no. Yes, institutions have adopted it unquestionably, but the reason XRP has stuck around, and there's so many ways you can prove this, it's because of the retail side. Retail was here way before institutions came in. XRP's been around since 2013. There were almost 0 institutions on the planet that had interest in it. Even if you fast forward half a decade after that, getting to like 2018 or so. Not so many institutions then. You're starting to see some trickle in. But none, almost none. The reason it lived, it's not because of institutions, it's because it works, and it's because of people like you and I that believe that it makes sense. That's it. That's what they're missing here. And so I can appreciate that they understand institutional adoption is important. I'm not disputing that. Of course it is. That's not what's gotten us here, though. And they do recognize XRP holders on the retail side is important, thankfully. So that part they do get right. Because without us, it wouldn't be here. We are the ones that decided it made sense. That increase, that's what caught the institutional side attention. Clearly. And so towards a little bit later in the article, they wrote, beyond that, XRP has a very dedicated base of retail investors who have proven willing to hold it through thick and thin. Even the coin's protracted doldrums from 2022 through late 2024 didn't result in the group's enthusiasm diminishing much, and as a result, the patience of XRP's small holders is legendary in the crypto industry, at least. They're also a built-in group of evangelists, which equates to free marketing for the coin. In other words, XRP's holders are already in it for the long run, and they don't show any signs of stopping. Okay, if they want to call it marketing, people like you and I who are interested, they're calling us marketers. Look, I don't think that's the best way to categorize it. I mean, if you want to say that it results in what is effectively marketing, okay, I guess so. But the truth of it is, we're a community. We have a common interest here, and we talk about it, and it catches even the attention of even more people who then look into it and like, oh, wow, you guys are actually making a lot of sense. And then they jump in as well. So it's really just community. It's like word of mouth. It just happens to be online. But what they keep missing here is that, you know, they go into these reasons, it's institution, this and that. But why are we here? They say it's because of retail investors. Okay, go one layer deeper. Why are we here? It's because the technology at its core, it just freaking works. It just works. It fulfills the promise that Bitcoin couldn't keep. That's what XRP does. That's at the core of it. Now, you can name a ton of other reasons and all sorts of businesses choosing to build on top of the XRP ledger. There's been all sorts of stuff that's happened. Real world utility, businesses using it. Obviously, this is all true. But look to the core of this. And so that's why I say, like, anybody who can't be intellectually honest enough, even if you hate XRP, to just be like, okay, it's still here after all these years. What do I not get? Like, have that approach to your own peril. That's all that I'm saying right here. It's not good for you, though. And there's reasons to believe that even this market cycle, things are about to get a lot hotter. Check this out. There's a post by Julian Biddle, CFA. He's the head of macro research at Global Macro Investor, which is GMI for short. And he shared this chart. This is in the pink, it is the GMI Financial Conditions Index with a 3-month lead over Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's the black line here. And so they lined it up so that you can see that there's a correlation. It's just that the Financial Conditions Index leads what happens with Bitcoin. And this is interesting. Julian Biddle, some of you will recall, at some point in the last several days or so, I believe, I shared a post from him. Maybe it was like a week ago. I can't remember. But he was highlighting also a separate post, which was pretty similar to this. And there was, in his post, there was like a 12-week lead time of liquidity. I believe it was the global M2 liquidity. And it shows that once you account for that 12-week lead time, it just correlates perfectly. And what we've been seeing is liquidity increasing, which is why they've been predicting over at GMI a massive burst coming probably some point in April, could be May, I believe is what they've stated here. And so now they're looking at a different metric here, which is kind of singing the same tune. It's GMI Financial Conditions Index. And I'm not sure if they've shared in a separate post. I haven't seen it exactly what is computed in this particular index. But suffice it to say, these are data-driven people. And so I have confidence in them that whatever they have behind that is worth considering. Now, Raoul Pal, he's the founder and CEO of GMI. He used to work at Goldman Sachs. He actually does hold some XRP, by the way. And his whole career has been in finance. And he says that what's most likely is the best is yet ahead. So now think about this. XRP perfectly positioned this particular market cycle to melt faces. Look, if this market's going to go, what's going to perform the best? You see how primed XRP is, right? And so given that it just works, and you can also talk beyond that, if you want to talk with the idea of it making it to 2030 or beyond, it's very obvious to me XRP has achieved escape velocity. It's been live for over 12 years at this point. It just freaking works. It just does. Everything's going the right direction. So unless we see something materially shift, I think it's safe to say at this point, XRP already won. So now all we have to do is just wait for more people to learn about crypto and then come to the same well that we just drank from effectively. Like, that's the concept. We already found the winner. Almost no humans know about it. Yeah, it's great. The price is higher than it was, before the election. It was at 49 cents. But you need a bigger crypto pie and then more people figuring out about XRP. But that's why if we just play the waiting game, I think this all works itself out. As long as we keep seeing things go this way, which is why I continue to monitor this on a daily basis. But my bet has always been that, either I'm right and an XRP is worth a fortune one day, or I'm wrong and I ride this bitch to zero. And the only way that I wouldn't, if I saw, mind you, when I say I'd ride it to zero, that's based on me believing that XRP makes sense the way it is right now. And I believe that since 2017, and I think it's only gotten better. Now, if something actually materially changed with like the code or something disastrous, I would scream it. And if I felt it made sense to exit, I would, because I'm never going to marry an asset. I'm not tribal. And that would suck if I ever thought XRP didn't make sense. But that's not what's happening here. So we don't have to worry about that. I'm just sharing my thoughts and kind of thinking out loud a little bit, just to kind of share the concept that, like, we already won, folks. We already did. It's not an if type of thing at this point. We already did. So given that that's the case, and there'll be ups and downs, there'll be big pullbacks for XRP along the way also. But given that's the case, and given that XRP is making up for lost ground after being artificially suppressed by the government over the last several years, well, if Raoul Pal and Julian Biddle are correct, and I have a hunch that they are, we're going to have some crazy price action in the very near future here. And so here is the post from Raoul Pal that he shared just this afternoon. People are yet to understand that we have a macro hedge fund manager running the treasury, not an ex-central banker. He deeply understands liquidity impacts and how to drive financial conditions to drive liquidity, and how that in turn drives the economy and markets. His entire strategy is to lower the three legs of financial conditions: dollar, rates, and oil, to goose the business cycle. Our GMI Financial Conditions Index, that's the one that I just showed you in the other chart, is screaming higher. Conditions loosening, as is global M2, so that's liquidity, money supply, global M2, and even more importantly, GMI global total liquidity. The effects should kick in the next week or two, and the recovery in asset prices and economic data should be sharp in the coming weeks and should be persistent. And to me, that just makes sense. There's been such a strong correlation going back years and years and years. And also, if that doesn't happen, that means that this time's actually different. And I simply don't believe that is the case. I think that this thing is going to be very samey. There's this post from the blockchain backer. He said, somehow, some way, XRP and Bitcoin are still holding supports during all this. Look at these charts. That's amazing. This has never happened in history. There's never been a catastrophic sell-off like this. And then crypto asset class is like, no, we're good. And not just good, we picked up green. We picked up some points today, you know? That's wild. Take a look at this also from the blockchain backer. He says, this event has triggered oil to go below 4-year support levels. Okay, now that's interesting. Well, as it pertains to XRP specifically, because of what's on your screen right here. Chart analyst Dom at TraderView2. He's been tracking this particular pair, XRP denominated in US oil. And the reason that I found this interesting, I know a lot of people don't track XRP denominated in US oil, but you can denominate anything in anything. You can pull up whatever pair you want. The whole world is intertwined, so it's interesting, and you can figure out things that you might not otherwise figure out by looking at particular pairs. I know most people are interested in seeing what it is, XRP's price against the dollar, but this makes sense as well. And so here he showed the XRP US oil pair, and he said, massive bounce coming through here. This is thanks to US oil having its worst breakdown in years, and that's what the blockchain backer was highlighting. He says, crazy how that works. The range continues. So look at this. It held above this line. It just burst up. And then, yeah, XRP was up a little bit against the dollar, but more so because oil fell against the dollar. And so you get this on the XRP US oil pair. Isn't that fascinating? Funny how that works out here. The whole world is intertwined here. Interesting stuff. And so if you're wondering, like, why does it make sense to do this? Well, there's this post from Dom. He said, many ask, why do you pair things with US oil? Perspective, that's all it is. When everyone is focused on pairing assets with USD, you can pair them with other assets and get a picture others won't see or the USD charts fail to show. The best example was Bitcoin consolidation last year. The US oil pairing clearly showed how bullish that structure was well before the USD pair did. And so you can see BTC US oil on the right and BTC USD on the left. And it's another way of looking at things. That's why it's the same reason that when people highlight XRP priced against NVIDIA, like that's been fascinating. Because when XRP bottomed against NVIDIA in 2017, that marked the bottom. And it's similar to how it bottomed in 2017 against the dollar. It's just another way of looking at things. And there's confluence. And It's just a very complex web of like just global trade, economic, so on and so forth. And so you can look at things like this. It's not just the dollar that you should look at. And I know not all of you care about the dollar. Like half my audience is outside the United States anyway, so it's whatever. Even then, it would be whatever fiat currency you're most interested in. But I think you get the cut of my jib here. So anyway, if you were wondering why some analysts will look at various XRP pairs, or in this case, he's got Bitcoin on the screen. That's exactly why. So anyway, I think it makes sense to be very optimistic here. The best is yet ahead. And for those that hold XRP beyond 2030, can you imagine? Like, I think if you could talk to somebody 10 or 20 years in the future, they would wish that they had your opportunity right here, right now. I'm willing to bet that's the case. I think XRP clearly has long-term viability. There are just certain attributes that on a bare bones level I think are always going to be desirable, and XRP was one of the first movers, so we dominated that payments use case. Like XRP just did. And it's hard to supplant technologies that have become firmly entrenched in society. That's just the way it is. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.